With all that, Jesse, are you ready for rapid fire?
I hear Bailey in the background, so I think it's ready for some rapid fire.
Yes, getting louder, getting louder. It's funny that you can hear that in the other room because other people in this house never. I don't think they always believe me when I tell them that I can hear them in here. There's things going on.
I thought I'd back you up because if I can hear it, I know you can hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So the Athletic ranked the top college football coaches in the country. Here's the ranking. I'll give you 1 through 10. Number 1, Kirby Smart. Number 2, Ryan Day. Number 3, Dabo Swinney. Number 4, Steve Sarkisian. Kalen DeBoer at 5, Marcus Freeman 6, Dan Lanning 7, James Franklin 8, Matt Campbell 9, Brian Kelly number 10. So do you buy or sell that list?
So here's what I'm going to do. I'm not really going to nitpick the order because I think that's irrelevant. But if I am going to pick the order, Ryan Day, definitely not number 2. That's the only order thing
That's what I feel like. It's like, okay, he finally won a national championship, and now all of a sudden he's second best in the country, only to Kirby Smart.
Not buying that.
I don't buy that either.
Is still above Ryan Day, in my opinion.
Yeah, I believe so as well. 1, because he's got multiple championships.
That's what I mean. 2, he built a dynasty there for like 5 years.
2, he might be having a hard time sort of adjusting to the modern world of college football right now, but you can't tell me he's not a better head coach. You know, like he doesn't have, I don't think Dabo Swinney and Clemson have people, you know, sinking $20+ million, you know, into keeping a roster together the way Ryan Day did last year. I don't think anybody else has that. Stymie, James Franklin was number 8. See if I can post this in the chat so that it.
See, like, I think James Franklin is a top 10 coach. He just can't win at the national level. And so, like, at that point, is he even worthy of being in your top 10? Because what's it matter if you can't win the big ones? So he's like right on the cusp of like 10, 11 for me. But I'll give him the benefit.
James Franklin is?
I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Like,
but I mean, he still deserves to be ahead of Matt Campbell, right?
Yes. Matt Campbell's off my list. He's not in my list.
I like the Matt Campbell thing. If he was that good a coach, he wouldn't still be at Iowa State. I'm sorry. Like, you can't be like, he gets the most out of Iowa State. Like, you can only live on that for so long. It's like, get a premier job and compete for national championships if you're really that good a coach.
Well, the other thing is, how many actual titles has he won at Iowa State?
Right.
I don't think he has. I don't think he
has either. I don't think he's won a conference championship. Let me check it here real quick.
And so for that reason, too, I got to boot him out of there. I would feel more comfortable with Lane Kiffin than I would Matt Campbell.
I think so, too.
Lane Kiffin's
but again, in my top 10. Campbell is getting this reputation of more with less. Okay, so according to this, in 2020, which was the COVID season when there were fewer games, he did win the Big 12.
I'm not buying it that year.
Yeah. It's very easy. A lot easier to dismiss because they didn't, they played, well, I guess they still played 9 conference games that year, but yeah, so that's their only conference championship. Other than that, well, I guess he couldn't have won. I guess he won the Big Ten regular season this past year. He obviously didn't win the Big Ten championship game because this says he was in first place in the conference. They obviously lost to Arizona State, though, because Arizona State is the team that, ended up playing in the college football playoff, not Iowa State. I'm a little, again, like we're arguing over spots, and like you said, you weren't going to argue that much about.
I just kind of wanted to peg 1 through 10. I don't care about. It's just kind of looking at that 10 who doesn't belong. Matt Campbell doesn't belong, in my opinion. And I'm not really sold on DeBoer either, to be honest with you.
That's where I was going.
Because he's got an NAIA championship and he made a national championship with Washington, but outside of that, he doesn't have a proven college track record like the likes of Brian Kelly. Brian Kelly's overall record in college football is great when you look at it on paper. He's far more experienced than someone like DeBoer. And so I would be more comfortable with Brian Kelly, honestly, than I would DeBoer in this list.
Yeah, I actually think Kelly needs to be ahead of DeBoer, especially like the way Notre Dame is talked about in terms of relevance and all those different things. Well, like, was anybody, was Washington having their relevance questioned every year when Kalen DeBoer was getting them, into the college football playoff and then a national championship game? Okay, did Washington, kind of regress after DeBoer left? Yeah, but they also had all this first round talent. They basically had most of their roster was gone. There was near complete turnover after he left. And then, was Alabama as good with Kalen DeBoer as Nick Saban? No, he wasn't. So I feel like Kalen DeBoer really for being a one-year wonder. And like you said, he did really well at the NAIA level, but I think it's a little bit too fast, too soon to be putting him among the elite in college football right now, like big time college football coaches on this list.
Definitely agree.
But, Marcus Freeman shows up on this after getting Notre Dame to the national championship game. I don't think he was even showing up in the top 20 on most of these lists last year. He was still like in that 25-30 range, I think, in most of those lists. So he's made a pretty huge jump. I can't tell if DK is actually being sarcastic or serious, saying that he agrees with you. Kelly should be number 2.
Marcus Freeman's first 3 years as a head coach and starting at a program like Notre Dame is still impressive on paper, considering what they accomplished this last season. However, if you take out this last season and they have a finish like they did in the first 2 seasons, then no, Marcus Freeman doesn't belong on this list. But in year 3, he still beat Indiana, the SEC champ, the Big Ten runner-up, and lost in the national championship to a team that was just loaded. You just ran into a good team, it is what it is.
He beat the coach who's number 1 on this list, Kirby Smart, in a head-to-head matchup.
He's beaten Dabo Swinney head-to-head.
That's right. He's beaten him head-to-head.
James Franklin head-to-head.
Beat James Franklin in a head-to-head in the semifinal. So I think that his spot is much more earned because of the fact that you had multiple rounds, deeper rounds of the college football playoff compared to what DeBoer had, winning 1 game essentially to get to a championship game.
You had to beat 3 really good teams to make it to the national championship, And there's probably people who would argue that Cignetti belongs on this list in some capacity.
Stymie says no love for Belichick. Andrew says the turnaround DeBoer did at Washington was unreal. Jimmy Lake sucked. Again, like, I know the roster at Alabama wasn't as good as what Nick Saban had, and I've said time and again that just because it's Alabama doesn't mean that Kalen DeBoer was going to come in and, be in the playoffs and win championships right away. But he was coming off coaching in a national championship game, had the same quarterback Nick Saban had a lot of the same players still that Nick Saban had, and they were left out of a 12-team playoff.
You can make the argument that he stepped into a better roster.
Yeah, than what he had at Washington. Yeah.
All around.
Maybe
considered.
Like the quarterback and the number 1 receiver, Penix and Adunze. I was going to say the guy with the Bears, but
they look at the freshman that they had this year. That you can't tell me he's not. He might not be as mature as Rome Adunze, but he's still the top 2 wide receiver in the country.
Yeah. As Outbound said, he did get boat raced in the national championship game. That is a fact. DK asks, if Urban came back, where does he rank?
He'd have to be in the top 10, unfortunately. As crappy as a person he is, doesn't take away from what he can do as a head coach in college.
Still won national championships at
Multiple
schools. That's right. Fill in the blank. The best head coach who will never win a national championship is blank.
Brian Kelly. I'm serious.
He was my initial thought, but I'll go with his counterpart and I'll say James Franklin.
Because you look on paper.
Unless we're going to concede that Brian Kelly is the better coach than James Franklin, then in that case, okay, we would have to go Brian. Do you think Brian Kelly is a better head coach than James Franklin?
Oh, I think they're so similar it hurts.
I know. Like it's crazy how similar they are. I don't think you can go wrong with either answer.
I think they're literally like 1A and 1B. But on paper, Brian Kelly's overall record is 292 and 107. You know, like that's a crazy winning percentage at the college level. He's 29 and 11 at LSU, which isn't great for LSU standards, but it's like not horrible for SEC country when you're playing that schedule every year.
Yeah.
So it's like, but of course his knock is you can't win the big one. And so if you're telling me who's a great coach that's not going to win the national championship, I watched it for a lot of years. His name is Brian Kelly.
I can't disagree. I mean, he moved to LSU to put himself closer to winning a national championship, and he's farther away now than he's been in a long time, really, at least the last 7 years since they first got to the playoff. So either way, but I would go Franklin as well, because I think that now granted, Notre Dame Penn State was a great, well played, hard fought, competitive game. It came right down to the wire, and obviously a big turnover at the end and a big field goal. You know, like we're splitting hairs. He very easily could have won that game and been in the national championship game himself. But I mean, I feel like what we saw from Franklin and Penn State last year was what kind of everyone said. It's like, okay, you're in the playoff now, but I don't think that I think that that's the ceiling for him.
And we are so fortunate that Notre Dame came back and won that game, because it allows us just to speak even more absurdly about James Franklin and have no remorse, because you can't make these kind of arguments if James Franklin beats Notre Dame and goes on to the national championship. So I think that's funny, first and foremost. But yeah, it's just, I didn't gain anything by watching James Franklin beat SMU and Boise State. I didn't.
Right. And that's the point, because of the way the thing was formatted, they didn't get a bye, but they got the next best thing with what their path looked like. He didn't have to beat Georgia to get there.
I mean, it showed, right?
Yeah. Notre
Dame was far less fresh in the first half, but when we could sit down and make adjustments, X's and O's, James Franklin was down in the hole again. He got out coached in a half of football when he had a half advantage, because Notre Dame had to play slugfest with IU in the cold and Georgia, the SEC champ, who couldn't throw the ball because their backup quarterback was in. So they were playing, a lot of heavy. It was a physical matchup, very physical matchup.
Right.
And then, in comparison, obviously Penn State gets SMU and Boise State. Like, it showed. But then he got out-coached when it really mattered the most.
Josh says Kelly won a title at Grand Valley State. Obviously, Division II does not count in this conversation.
Great trivia fact.
Andrew went deep, and Lance Leopold is not a bad answer.
No, he's not. But there's also, I think Josh Heupel's not a bad answer.
Yeah.
Who else do I think is not a bad? I think Eli Drinkowitz is
Yeah. I think he's found his ceiling as well. Scale of 1 to 10. How important is Steve Angeli's experience in the quarterback competition with CJ Carr and Steve Angeli?
10 being incredibly important. I'd put this at a 2.1 out of 10. It has ultimately no relevance at the end of the day, because there is no experience. You played one bowl game that I think any quarterback could have probably started and had success, considering, what was departing from the team that they faced. And it was third and fourth strings a lot of the time. And it's not about experience at this point. When you're starting fresh, you got to go with the guy that's got the most talent and is going to provide the most juice to the offense. Angeli he can check boxes and make check downs and 10-yard crosses across the middle, but he's not dynamic on his feet. He doesn't have a deep down ball threat or downfield ball. He doesn't just have that electric, game-changing juice that could amplify a game that I think CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie could bring in comparison to Angeli.
I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, the guy has 245 career snaps. That's basically 4 games spread over 3 seasons with, like one full game. He got to play a full half a couple of different times because, there were blowout situations both at Purdue and the Tennessee State game. So he got, so like that's what, so that's what those 2 halves plus the Sun Bowl, that's 2 of his games right there, and everything else is just snap spread across the rest of those 3 seasons. And a lot of people act like he's got some great,
track
he's
record.
got some great experience advantage on either of these 2 other guys. But what you said, like, he is not the most skilled of these guys. The arm talent is not the same. The intangibles are not the same. There's a lot of good things that Steve Angeli can do, but experience is not the thing that puts him over the top. And as I've said before, like, experience can be valuable, but it can also be vastly overrated. And I just feel like it is vastly overrated in this instance. And I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again right now. Jameis Winston and Johnny Manziel were Heisman Trophy winners as redshirt freshmen. They had 0 experience going into those seasons. Their second season in college, when they were redshirt freshmen, they became the starters. They won Heisman trophies that year. They led their
Manning
teams
is going to
great
start
season.
next year.
Yeah, well, but he's got probably more valuable experience even than what Angeli has right now. So yeah, so you're 2.1. I'll put it at 1.9. Outbound says Steve is a Will Howard type QB. I don't see that at all.
I would not. That's
Will Howard can run. Like,
he's stockier. He's got a stronger arm.
He's got a bigger arm. Yeah. I don't see that. I don't see that analogy personally.
Respectively, no.
You're right. So Notre Dame beat Pittsburgh 55-54, men's basketball, first round of the ACC tournament today. What should be the goal for the Irish men this week at the ACC tournament?
To win tomorrow against North Carolina. I think that's
kind of my boat as well. Like,
let's be honest. I think if you win against North Carolina,
get
that's
that upset over a blue blood program in their home state. Feel good about yourself. You accomplished something. You won a couple games as a 13 seed at the ACC tournament, or the 12 seed, whichever one. Yeah, they were the 12 seed.
Yeah, beat North Carolina, look competent against Wake Forest, and if you beat Wake Forest, holy crap, that's like the cherry on top. But just look competent against Wake Forest if you get to that point.
Yeah, it just feels like that would be like for what this team has done this year, that would be an overachievement. Because, like, man, it's just like they just, I will give them this. They do play hard consistently. Like, I will give them the effort. But I mean, honestly, that's something that you should be praising with your youth team. Like praising.
That's what I tried. I tried to say run hard and everything will be all right, and everyone's just jogging.
But my point, now you know the frustration of a coach, Jesse, when you're trying to bring effort out of people, right? But that's my point. Is like you shouldn't have to praise the effort of guys who are getting Division I scholarships and making NIL money and everything else. Like that should definitely be a given. But man, they just don't shoot very well. It's just like.
So does that give you more confidence though, that once they actually get some of these recruits in there that actually have more skills and like more more players like Markus Burton are in there.
Yeah.
That just because the shots and looks are there, they're just not sinking them, you know?
Right.
And at
Exactly.
that point, I think it's more, as much as Shrewsbury wants to, you know, blame me. It's not about the players. At the end of the day, that's why I respect him, because he knows it's about the players, but
Right.
he's not going to openly say it like Brian Kelly would.
He's still taking it off the player. Yeah, that's exactly right.
He's taking it.
He's
to
not
the chin.
throwing the players under the bus. He's willing to take it on the chin because he's not worried about his ego.
Exactly, because he knows that it'll turn around.
That's right. That's exactly.
And that's
right.
That's why I hated this whole, you know, his speech was fabricated or over the top, or it wasn't. I don't care, because at least he wore it to the chin for his players that he knows are underperforming. He watches the film. He watches the tape. He knows. End of my rant.
No, that's exactly right. Hey, let's not forget, NC State won 5 games in 5 days last year. They played in this first round of the tournament last year, made it all the way to the Final Four at the end of the season. Now, I'm not saying Notre Dame's going to make some miracle run, because, again, like to see them hit, you know, better than 35% of their shots to feel good about them. But because the looks were there, they just, you know, it's like, oof. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Beat North Carolina tomorrow, and I think that you know, like, that would leave a pretty good taste in your mouth as a nice, you know, then you'd have to play Wake Forest, obviously, the next day. But if you can beat North Carolina tomorrow, I feel like that would be a nice little capper for this team.
Wake Forest has all the pressure because they're not, this is a big year for them. They're not used to being a top 4 seed and having, you know, success in the ACC, and they got the double bye and all that good stuff. Like, you know, you get to that point and you start talking about what you were talking about with NC State, like, anything can happen, especially when teams that aren't supposed to or normally in these situations start to feel the pressure a little bit of the situation. Notre Dame's won a couple games. Their feet are comfortable on the court. You know, you could ride some momentum a little bit. That's what you just need to see. Just get on a little hot streak for one time and just take this thing out.
Get on a little heater, baby. Yeah. Come on now. Let it ride. Fill in the blank. Markus Burton being named second team All-ACC after leading the conference and ranking second in the nation in scoring is blank.
It's bogus, to be honest with you. And, you know, like, the thing is Burton missed that time, and I don't know if that played into this at all. But that was up front in the season. That was more, that had less impact on what we're talking about. And that's all ACC. He still played majority of the ACC season. And so how can the leagues, no matter how bad the team is, how can you not make – that's the whole point of all conference teams.
Now remember, this is voted on by coaches in the media. So it's not like the league is, just saying this is your all conference team. This is voted on, just to clarify.
And so it's just, it's just bogus at the end of the day, because how can you not respect a guy? Like, where would Notre Dame be without Markus Burton in some of these ACC contests? Like, that's the other flip side. Like, they already struggled, but like they would struggle a lot worse if it wasn't for Markus Burton. And so, I find it to be bogus at the end of the day.
It's a big league, but the concentration of voters still the biggest concentration come from one place, and that is Tobacco Road. Like, Tobacco Road bias is real. 4 schools are in the state of North Carolina, and that's where the biggest concentration of the media is, and that's where they come from. What's odd to me, this is the first time since 2017 that the ACC's leading scorer did not make it on the first team. So that's been 8 years since the guy who led the conference in scoring wasn't first team. But what's odd to me is same conference, same sport, but the men are still doing 5 guys on the first team, 5 guys on the second team, then there's 5 guys on the third team, and then they have 10 on honorable mention. So that's 25 total players who are being honored, but they go 5, 5, 5, 10 honorable mention after that. The women have 15 players on the first team. The men have 5. Like, what sense does it make for the same conference, same amount of teams to be doing it that way, because a lot of these conferences, because of the fact that they're so big, like there should be at least 10 players with 18 teams. There should be at least 10 players on the first team on the men's side. The women have 15. So like, there's no excuse. Like why they're doing it this way just seems completely archaic to me. You can't keep adding teams, but have a first team of 5 players only. Like that is the biggest thing. You know, he came in 7th in the voting. I agree. He absolutely should have been up there, especially when you consider the fact that he's 2nd in the freaking nation in scoring, not just leading the conference, but 2nd in the nation. There's no reason he should be on the 2nd team. It just makes 0 sense. And
I think your argument is what makes the even more just head scratching is, yeah, how do you add more teams, add more players to the pool, but you're not willing to cough up at least 2 or 3 more spots for the first team all conference?
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Now, I mean, like the Big Ten is still called the Big Ten, even though we all know there are not 10. There are many more than 10 teams in the conference. But most conferences, you know, like before it was the Big 12, it was the Big 8, and you know, like the Pac-10. You know, again, even though there were more, but you know, went Pac-10, Pac-12, it was Pac-8 before that. So like the average size conference used to be 10 teams. You know, kind of like right around 10 teams, and so it made sense that you only had like 5 players on a first team. But when you're pushing 20 teams in your conference, you need to expand what the first team is. There should at least be 10 players on the first team in the ACC. So Jess, there's been a frenzy of NFL free agent moves this week. Which one do you want to start with?
I think the one that is the most intriguing is Fields to the Jets.
I found that baffling that that the New York Jets with a new head coach, Aaron Glenn, like Justin Fields is going into his 5th season as an NFL quarterback. What has he shown that would say first time head coach, that's the guy I want to build my franchise?
See, that's what I mean. Are they actually making him the franchise quarterback? Are they just getting him as a just in case if they draft a quarterback? Are they going to play Fields and develop a drafted quarterback in the meantime? I don't know. I don't know. I think that one has a lot of questions about it, because how are you spinning this? What's the overall kind of plan or path forward? Is it because I think all of the options I just kind of got into are all on the table?
DK, of course, is trolling us right now with Cowboys stuff. But yeah. So I thought that was the biggest head scratcher. But you know, there were also the other quarterbacks that moved. Sam Darnold went to Seattle. Geno Smith to the Raiders. Daniel
that
Jones.
Makes sense because Pete and Geno obviously.
Yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. And then when that happened, the trade to the Raiders, it opened up a spot for Sam Darnold because it was looking like he was going to kind of be the odd man out.
So those two are like, you know, it is what it is. But if you want to get back into some of the I think Daniel Jones to the Colts is like, hey, Anthony Richardson, you better figure this thing out, or we're going to go with old reliable Daniel Jones here.
And that's crazy that you're bringing in Daniel Jones to compete for a spot with the guy that was supposed to be your franchise quarterback.
Like that's what you resort to at this point?
Right.
You got to bring in Daniel Jones to push or motivate or challenge your quote unquote franchise quarterback.
That's right. John says the Steelers dropped the ball.
I don't agree with that though, because I like what they did with DK Metcalf. And now you got him, and I've heard maybe they're going to maybe trade Pickens, and so what you could flip into that, or maybe you don't even trade them and you play them together and you still have a really good defense, and then the Steelers themselves
who's playing quarterback though? Because
draft a quarterback.
Yeah, but they're going to have to trade up to get a franchise type guy.
Or that's what I mean. Do you maybe get like I don't
all the talk was,
name.
You know, because it sounds like Russell Wilson wasn't coming back. And all the talk was, well, you got Justin Fields. Are you going to sign Justin Fields? And the next thing you know, he signs with the Jets. Well, you don't have to say his name. I'll say it for you. Because when asked what the best fit for Aaron Rodgers is, NFL Network analyst Michael Robinson said Rodgers' best fit is the recliner that he has in his big house. Do you buy or sell that?
I do buy that because Aaron Rodgers is out of his prime. And not only is he out of his prime physically, I think mentally he's out of his prime too. I don't think he cares about football nearly as much as he used to. Like he's not locked in, and football is not his life like it used to be. And he comes with so much extra baggage, the injuries. I don't think he's played competitive, serious football for going on almost 3 years now. And then the baggage he brings with him. And then, you're a big market. You're the Steelers. You just traded for Metcalf. You got a good defense. Like, it just sounds like a catastrophe waiting to happen. And not only with the Steelers, just anywhere else. It's not worth the baggage, and he's not near as good, and he's not near as committed as he used to be.
I agree. There's a reason that the Jets didn't want him back. And, I know that, there was all that stuff out there, where the Jets told him, look, if you're willing to give up going on Pat McAfee every week, we can talk about it. Now there's, disputes as to how, serious that was and everything else. But I believe it because it just feels like he's interested in things other than actually playing football.
He wants to be controversial at this point.
At the age that he's at, he either needs to start a podcast or, just retire and get hired by one of the networks, because one of them would snatch him up because he's Aaron Rodgers and he likes to talk and people would be talking about him.
Yeah, I mean, he loves to listen to himself, and there's people out there who want to listen to what he has to say.
Yeah, exactly.
Like DK said, maybe it's all the hallucinogens getting to him.
Ayahuasca?
Ayahuasca.
A little ayahuasca. Joseph asked earlier, I don't know if Joseph's still hanging out, what team wins the women's basketball national championship? He says, as much as I hate to ask, you think South Carolina wins another title?
Don't you think it's like pretty wide open in terms of probably like 8 to 10 teams that could?
It's my thought exactly. You literally, as I was thinking about this, took right from my thought bubble. I think that there are like 8 to 10 teams who all have legitimate, because like when you look at it, they've all beaten each other.
Yeah.
Like Notre Dame, obviously, with the wins over UConn, Texas, and USC. USC beat UCLA twice. UCLA just turned around and beat USC in the Big Ten championship game. UConn's beaten USC. And again, Notre Dame
thumped South Carolina.
UConn. Right. And
South Carolina has thumped some other people.
Texas and South Carolina have split their games. And I agree with what Andre's saying. It's all about the matchups. And that's like we'll talk about it next Monday after the bracket comes out, obviously, and kind of see how things look. But I think it's very wide open, and I don't think you can, as much as everyone's hand wringing about Notre Dame, I don't think you can write them off just yet, because they have obviously shown that they can compete with those elite teams and beat those elite teams. They just have to get it figured out again and see what things look like. Andre wants to know if we're doing the bracket. I mean, we didn't put anything up for it last year, put anything on it last year, but we can do.
You want me to organize an IB breakdown bracket challenge?
Sure.
All right.
Men's and women's.
All
right.
All brackets must be submitted to me, and I will hand calculate all of the scoring.
All right.
Well, I'll have an Excel sheet, but no.
Yeah, but so I don't want that to sound like a cop out, but I really think that.
No, I think it's a good thing. I think women's basketball, there's usually every year you're like, these 3, maybe 4 teams could win it, but this year it feels more open.
And honestly, with what UConn did to South Carolina a couple of weeks ago, like UConn might be the favorite right now, just based on how they're playing. They've only got 3 losses.
So Joe said ceiling floor for Notre Dame women's team. I think ceiling national championship floor Elite 8.
I think so.
I don't. They can't lose in the 16 again this year.
I mean, I want to see what the bracket looks like. Because I saw a projection the other day where they were a 2 seed and TCU was a 3 seed in the same region. And that would be a matchup in the Sweet 16. So
be some sweet revenge.
Yeah. I mean, so like you could get that kind of, matchup. It's going to depend on what the bracket like, so like I would say, yeah, I still say ceiling national championship, floor, Sweet 16, Elite 8, again, like depending on what the draw looks like and who the matchups are. Because as of right now, the best they're going to be is a 2 seed. And like Vince and I were saying yesterday, there's not a whole lot of difference between a 2 and a 3 as opposed
you're going
to
play each
a
other
1 and a 2.
16.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, my point is they can't be a 1 seed at this point. So the draw is going to look a little bit different just based on that. But Sunday night, Selection Sunday.
Sunday.
Yeah, baby. All right, well, that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate you being here. And hit that like button before you leave. We always appreciate it when you do that. Jesse will work on getting those bracket challenges put together. And I
got to win a game tonight first, all right?
Okay, Coach. All right, let's go. Let's see some effort. Man,
maybe I got to get out there and run sprints to start practice or something.
Might be a good idea.
Get the people fired up.
Get it going. Get the blood flowing. Coach is working. We got to work too. Talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.